Hello everybody, and welcome to a Hearthstone video. I haven't done Hearthstone in a while, and there's a good reason for that. We'll get to that. We'll also talk about all of the changes to the new playstyles of Standard and Wild, and Whispers of the Old Gods and all of that. Obviously, the background footage is Hearthstone. This is post-commentary because it's really hard for me to talk about this kind of stuff while playing Hearthstone and make it a good video. But Whispers of the Old Gods is out today. The patch had hit a couple days ago, so nerfs to standard cards that you got like in the base set happened. And for the most part, like most people, I stopped playing the game as soon as League of Explorers came out, or actually shortly before that even, because the game got really stale. You had situations where on turn 7 of either player's turn, you always expected a Dr. Boom to come out because it was just so good. There were also other combinations, like in Druid, you always expected Force of Nature, Savage Roar, and it's just like these decks always ran certain cards because the cards were so good. But with Whispers of the Old Gods, the game has changed. And that's because, like most card games, the game has 2 different formats now. You see in physical card games, especially, say like Magic, that's been going on for years and years and years, and they release tons of cards a year. They break the game into a standard and a wild format as well, where you have cards that can be played competitively and cards that can be just played together because it's awesome. But in the wild format and in Hearthstone, you can play any card in the game if you own it. Now, this means all of the previous expansions, the new one, all of that. So the combinations of cards get really overpowered. But in Standard, you can only play like the previous 3 expansions in the base set. So all of like the cards that you can get out of the base game, plus as of this time, you get Whispers of the Old Gods, you get the League of Explorers, and the Grand Tournament, and the Blackrock Mountain. Those are the cards that are playable. But when you take out all of Goblins and Gnomes and Naxxramas and stuff like that, it actually helps the game a lot, because a lot of those cards in those sets were really good. Think Lotheb, think Haunted Creeper, think Dr. Boom as a good example. And then they went through and they went to the base cards, the ones that you can get without having any of the expansions. And they nerfed a lot of the ones that were really good. Ancient of Lore is a really good example. You used to draw 2 cards, just choose one, draw 2 cards or heal 5 health. Now it's just draw 1 card or heal 5 health. Force of Nature, Savage Roar isn't a thing anymore, really, because Force of Nature no longer summons 3 2/2 Treants for 6 mana that have charge, which means then you could Force of Nature and do effectively 12 damage right off the bat with the 2-card combination. Instead, it will actually, technically, it's 14 damage, right? Because you then can attack with your hero as well if you don't use your hero power. Then they also changed that to being just summon. It's 5 mana now, so it's cheaper, but it only summons 3 2/2s. That's all it does. And I like that. I like that they went through the base set and they changed it. They nerfed overpowered stuff. They went through, got rid of the overpowered cards in Standard, and this will rotate out the next, like when an adventure comes out, let's say in September or August. That's probably when it's going to come out. Then the previous one will get dropped out, which would be Blackrock Mountain. And then we'll have the Grand Tournament, League of Explorers, Whispers of the Old Gods, and whatever's coming up next, essentially. And then the base set. So that's how like Wild and Standard works. What this causes is a cool shift in how they design cards, because now they're not limited by cards that were already there, that were typically more powerful than what they could put in an expansion anyways, which means the new stuff wouldn't get played. But then it's also not limiting the design choices of the new cards, because they're not having to create cards that work around the overpoweredness of the previous cards. It makes a lot of sense from a design perspective. It makes a lot of sense from a play perspective, because now you're no longer having to play around the idea of knowing all of these other cards. It's better for a new player perspective, because now you're not having to get Naxxramas and Goblins vs. Gnomes and then also get everything else. Now you could just kind of pick and choose out of the everything else if you want to play Standard. But if you want to play Wild, then all of the cards that you had previously are playable there. So for those of you guys who had huge decks, yeah, I know what that sounded like, then you can go play Wild. For me, I have like, you know, generally a good amount of cards from each set, and I would say I'm a slightly above average owner of cards in Hearthstone. I have more cards than the average player does. That being said, I have no desire to go back and play Wild in most cases. And even if I'm losing some cards, like I'm losing all of the Naxxramas cards effectively, not essentially because I'm not actually losing them. I'm not going to be able to play them in standard mode. And then all of the Goblins vs. Gnome stuff that I have, I'm not going to be able to play that in standard mode. And I don't really care, because I didn't really like those cards anyways. But if you take a set like Blackrock Mountain that I really like, because I really like big decks, I know what that sounds like, but I like to play really control-heavy decks with big minions, right? So you do a lot of dragons, you do a lot of control, that naturally turns into my Dragon Warrior, which is really fun to play, especially with like Varian and all of the dragons that I have. It's a really fun deck, and I'm gonna lose that come, you know, fall, and I'm not gonna be able to play a lot of those cards anymore. Am I gonna be broken up about it? No, because I know whatever the new set is gonna add additional cards. On top of that, Whispers of the Old Gods have it slowed the game down a bit, as in you're not gonna see as many aggressive decks, I don't think. And this is, you know, too early to tell what's actually going to happen, because the expansion has literally been out for a couple hours. But effectively, what the trend is we see that cards are slowing down, so we're going to see less aggressive decks, especially because there was a lot of aggression that came out of Naxxramas and Goblins vs. Gnomes. And instead, they've introduced a lot of really big cards. So, like, Cthulhu is a good example. You get it for free. Go log into Hearthstone. You get 3 packs for free. I'll explain how all this works in a minute, but you get 3 packs for free. The first pack you open will give you a couple cards. You'll get Cthulhu, which is legendary. It's a 10-10, 10. Or no, it's a 10 mana 6/6. And if you play it, it deals its damage to the board randomly, to all enemies randomly. And there's cards that buff Cthulhu while it's in your deck. So like you could play like a 2 mana card that gives Cthulhu 2/2. And there's cards that are like, if Cthulhu has 10 attack, then certain cards gain effects on it. Like the priest cards can heal you for 8 if the Cthulhu has 10 attack, or there's a druid card that gains an extra 5 health, and it would be like a 4 mana. 4 mana for 10, which is really powerful. So there's cards that interact with Cthulhu while it sits in your deck. And then you play Cthulhu later in the game, and let's say you get it up to a 20/20, then it deals 20 damage randomly across the board. Could go completely to the enemy's face, could hit their board. If they don't have a board, it's going to go straight to their face anyway. So it's really powerful turn 10 play. And then there's cards that, like the Harbinger, which if you play it at the beginning of your next turn, if it's still alive, it will draw. Now, I don't think this card is going to be played a lot, but it is interesting. It will draw a 10 mana card into your hand. So say you only had Cthulhu as your 10 mana card, it would draw it into your hand, then you're able to play it later in the game. So it's really cool interactions, and you get that card for free. You get Cthulhu for free, you get a couple Cthulhu cards for free. There's a lot of common ones that interact with Cthulhu, so there's some cool stuff that I think people will really enjoy. And the fact that you just get it by logging in, because as soon as you log in, you get 3 free Whispers of the Old God packs. You don't have to go buy them. Then you get a quest that says win 2 standard games. So go play standard mode and win 2 games. We'll give you 5 other packs. Now you're up to 8 Whispers of the Old God packs, which is pretty good. Then win 7 games and we'll give you another 5. So total, you're getting 13 packs, and that's not counting whatever gold that you had as well. So if you had any gold or dust saved up, then you could get additional stuff. So just right off the bat, players who are coming back to Hearthstone, which I know is a lot of people because this is a cool and exciting time for the game, are automatically getting 13 packs for free, regardless of the gold and dust that they have. Now, those packs are going to have multiple cards in them, so you're going to get a little bit of extra dust. You may get a duplicate legendary, or you may get multiple legendaries that are really good for you. I got Cho'Gall. Not sure how good he is. Probably going to dust him next week after we kind of see how the Warlock decks shake down. either way, the first deck I decided to make with all these cards was this Druid deck, which is just a Cthulhu Druid deck, just to see kind of how it would work. And surely enough, it was actually kind of fun. The deck definitely needs a lot of adjustments, and I've been out of practice with the game. I haven't played in a while. I recently started playing, so I make some mistakes, but in the end, I think the deck could be really, really good. It's going to be a deck that you see a lot of, because it's giving you a free, really good card that you can build a deck around. So you're just generally going to see a lot of players who are coming back to the game. And not even that, just players who think that the deck is going to be really good, making Cthulhu decks. There's a couple other really good old gods that came in, like Yogg'saron, which pretty sure this is the one that does it, but it plays, when you play it, it's a 10 mana card. It plays a random spell for every spell that you've cast this game. So imagine you can play 10 spells in the game. When you play Yogg'saron, he's going to cast 10 spells randomly. Target's chosen random. So you could get 10 flame strikes on the board, even though the first one would have done the job, or it could, and this is the funniest example I've seen, it could instantly, play a ton of cards, and then at the very end of its thing, shadow step it back into your hand, because it can target Yogg'saron with damage spells as well. You could like fireball your own Yogg'saron or fireball your face. It's a funny little card. I don't think many decks will be built around it, but it is a really cool little interaction. And for the most part, you're getting a lot of stuff like that. You're getting some really beautifully designed cards, in my opinion. Generally good cards. A lot of them are okay. Quite a few of them are bad. But for the most part, in this set, you're getting some really fun stuff that is going to change up the game. It's going to change up the meta game. And as I said, the game is going to slow down. Now, as far as the theming of the expansion goes, I really like it. But it's because I'm so nostalgic for this era of Warcraft with all the old gods. Because one of my fondest memories of Warcraft is, and I know this is a nostalgic memory, and I'll explain that, but is when Encourage opened on our server. What I remember it is that there were thousands of people at the gate, and it was really awesome and everything. But in reality, I remember it exactly, which was as soon as that patch launched, the servers were so laggy, and everything was really broken. And when we finally did open the Encourage gate on our server, there were like 1,000 people there. And then the server went down multiple times, and it was awful. It was an awful event, but it was really cool nostalgic-wise. I remember that so clearly. It was a lot of fun. And the same thing goes for like fighting in Encourage. That while there were some really annoying fights in there, it was a really cool raid. And AQ40 is just one of those things that I will forever remember in gaming. Like finally getting down to like the Twin Emperors and stuff after like months of being stuck on Yogg'saron. It's just that time of Warcraft is really nostalgic. So I really like this expansion for that flavor. And they've taken a lot of the old cards, say like Loot Hoarder, which is a 2-mana 2/1 when a Death Rattle draws a card. Well, now it's a 4-mana 4/2 Death Rattle draws a card, and it's like an evil version of it. And I like that they did that. And I think the flavor of the expansion works really, really well, and it's going to draw a lot of people back because of that nostalgia. And a lot of people even don't have that nostalgia from like vanilla Warcraft with the AQ gates opening. A lot of people jumped in Warcraft and Burning Crusade and Wrath of the Lich King, which means their nostalgia is going to come from playing Ulduar and doing Yogg'saron and all that. And I think that is really, really cool for a theming of an expansion. I think that they should do that a bit more. I really like Blackrock Mountain as a adventure because, again, the nostalgia there of doing those raid bosses and Blackwing Lair and all that. But honestly, I find taking specific things out of like WoW or just like Warcraft 3 even, like whatever you want to do, taking specific things out of those games and making expansion out of it is a lot more exciting than just doing the Grand Tournament. Like the Grand Tournament seems it was such a generic time in Warcraft. It was when I stopped playing in Wrath of the Lich King that it just feels not as fun to me. And if they did more stuff like this, like Whispers of the Old Gods. If they did a, I don't know, what was another really cool time in WoW? Like, a Burning Crusade is actually a pretty good example of something that would be really cool. Like if they added Kael'thas as a card, and I don't know. I actually can't come up with anything else because you already have Illidan, and so maybe that's not a good time to do it. I don't know. I think that as long as they continue this trend, now that they have standard and wild format of making cool expansions, they're going to be fine. I think there's going to be a lot of reasons to come back to Hearthstone for people, especially myself. When Hearthstone hit Goblins vs. Gnomes and even Blackrock Mountain, I was playing Hearthstone quite a bit. I was playing it at least every few days to get all my quests done, and I was enjoying the game. But since the Grand Tournament, I would say I've certainly become the casual Hearthstone player, the guy who maybe plays it once in a blue moon because I'm bored and I don't have anything else to do. But honestly, I think that's a lot of people at this point. And with this expansion, it gives people a reason to come back because the game isn't so predictable where you're like, oh, this druid is going to cast Force of Nature Savagery. It's going to happen, and I'm going to die next turn. There's nothing I can do about it, and that's no fun. Or it's turn 7, this mage is going to play Dr. Boom. That's just going to happen. And again, I think adding that standard format, adding that format of we're going to make it so you can only play certain cards and that you don't have to worry about those really annoying cards from the previous sets anymore, makes the game just 100 times more enjoyable. And I think for sure you guys are going to echo that as well. But with that, I'm so far I'm really enjoying it. I've played a few more games after this one. I've kind of tweaked this deck a bit. I've made a Cthulhu priest deck, and I'm going to play with that a bit, and I'm going to see if I can get a couple other legendaries that I can build a deck around, maybe make a Revoke Darkness. I think that's the name of the card. It's a Warlock card, which is basically 2 mana, replace your hero with a random hero, and replace all of your class cards, your Warlock class cards, with another class's class cards, whatever class it chooses. And it costs 1 less. I think that's a really cool concept for a card. So I'm going to probably mess around with that a bit, and we'll see how it goes. But with that being said, we shall see you guys next time.